In 1967, Malaysia and Singapore introduced their own separate currencies. One Malaysian dollar and one Singapore dollar could be exchanged at equal value, 1-to-1. The two neighboring countries had recently separated politically, but their currencies still shared the same monetary roots. Today, one Singapore dollar buys more than 3 Malaysian ringgit. For Malaysians traveling across the causeway, the difference can feel painful. A meal in Singapore becomes expensive. Rent becomes almost impossible. A salary earned in Singapore appears far larger when converted into ringgit. And every time the exchange rate reaches another milestone, the same question returns. What happened? Did Singapore simply become more successful? Did Malaysia make the wrong economic choices? Did corruption and political patronage weaken the country? Or is the exchange rate telling only one part of a much larger story? Tonight, we follow the paths of two currencies that began together, but traveled in very different directions. This is not simply the story of money. It is the story of political power, economic strategy, lost opportunities, global crises, and the price a country may pay when resources intended for the future do not always reach it. Before Malaysia and Singapore had separate currencies, they were connected through a shared monetary system inherited from British colonial rule. Trade moved through the same regional network. Businesses operated across borders. Families traveled between Malaya and Singapore, and the same currency circulated through much of the region. After Singapore separated from Malaysia in 1965, the two countries began establishing their own national institutions. Then, in 1967, Malaysia introduced the Malaysian dollar. Singapore introduced the Singapore dollar. Brunei also introduced its own currency. Although the notes looked different, the currencies were initially connected through interchangeability arrangements. A Malaysian dollar could be exchanged at par with a Singapore dollar, 1-to-1. The arrangement made commercial sense. The economies were deeply connected. Singapore was an important trading port. Malaysia supplied commodities, manufactured goods, and labor. Companies and families operated on both sides of the border. But equal exchange did not mean the two countries had identical economies. It did not guarantee that their currencies would remain equal forever. The arrangement was supported by policy. And once those policies changed, the currencies were free to take separate paths. In 1973, Malaysia ended its currency interchangeability arrangement with Singapore. From that moment, the ringgit and Singapore dollar were no longer required to remain equal. The separation was complete. But the dramatic gap visible today did not appear overnight. It emerged gradually, through decades of different decisions, different institutions, and different economic pressures. Malaysia entered the post-independence period with important advantages. It possessed land, oil and gas, rubber, tin, palm oil, a growing population, and the ability to develop a large manufacturing sector. Singapore faced a different reality. It was a small island with almost no natural resources. It depended heavily on imported food, fuel, and raw materials. Its domestic market was tiny. To survive, Singapore needed to become useful to the global economy. It developed its port, built an international financial center, attracted multinational companies, expanded advanced manufacturing, invested heavily in infrastructure and education, and gradually moved into higher value services and technology. Malaysia also industrialized. It built highways, ports, factories, and new cities. It attracted major electronics manufacturers. It reduced poverty. It developed oil and gas industries. And for several decades, it achieved impressive economic growth. This part of the story matters. Malaysia did not remain undeveloped. The country transformed dramatically. Millions of people experienced better housing, education, healthcare, and employment. The question is not whether Malaysia improved. It clearly did. The more difficult question is whether Malaysia improved as quickly, as efficiently, and as consistently as it could have. Because development is not only about building more factories. Eventually, a country must learn to create more valuable products. It must develop technology instead of only importing it. It must produce intellectual property, commercialize university research, create internationally competitive companies, retain highly skilled workers, and allow productive businesses to grow. This is where the currency story becomes connected to governance. From independence until the election of 2018, Malaysia was governed at the federal level by the same political coalition, first known as the Alliance, and later as Barisan Nasional. It is often described casually as one-party rule. Technically, it was a dominant coalition containing several political parties. With the United Malays National Organization as its most powerful component, long-term political stability can produce benefits. Governments can complete infrastructure projects, maintain consistent economic plans, and make decisions without constant political disruption. Malaysia's industrial development during this period demonstrates that long rule does not automatically produce economic failure. But political dominance also creates risks. When one governing group expects to remain in power, competition can weaken. Institutions may become less independent. Government contracts may be influenced by political connections. State-owned companies can be used for objectives that are not purely commercial. Criticism may be discouraged. Failed program may continue because admitting failure would be politically damaging. And public resources can become tied to systems of patronage. The damage does not always appear immediately. A new highway may still be built. A factory may still open. Gross domestic product may still grow. But the country may receive less value from every ringgit spent. A project that should cost 1 billion ringgit may cost much more. A contract may go to a politically connected company instead of the most capable one. A public institution may employ loyal supporters rather than specialists. A research program may receive impressive publicity, but produce little commercial technology. Over time, these small losses become structural. The cost of corruption is not only the money that disappears. The deeper cost is what that money could have created. Imagine that public money is meant to support a new technology center. It could train engineers, fund scientific research, help local companies develop patents, build laboratories, or provide grants to young businesses. But if part of that money is lost through inflated contracts, poor management, political appointments, or corruption, the country loses more than the original amount. It loses the companies that were never created, the inventions that were never commercialized, the skilled jobs that never appeared, the researchers who moved overseas, and the future tax revenue those industries might have produced. This is the opportunity cost of weak governance. It does not cause a currency to collapse in a single day. Instead, it slowly limits productivity. Malaysia's spending on research and development increased greatly from the 1990s, reaching a peak of around 1.4% of gross domestic product in 2016, but it later declined to around 1%. The number of researchers also fell sharply during part of the same period. Only a relatively small share of Malaysian small and medium-sized businesses invest in research and development. Malaysia still performs better in innovation than several neighboring economies, but it remains behind Singapore and has struggled to turn research, skills, and foreign investment into enough locally owned, high-value technology. Foreign companies may build factories in Malaysia while keeping their most valuable research, headquarters, patents, and decision-making functions elsewhere. Malaysia may assemble an advanced electronic product, but another country may design the chip, own the software, control the brand, and collect the largest profit. Assembly work creates jobs. But ownership of technology creates far greater long-term value. When a country remains dependent on imported expertise and foreign intellectual property, more money can flow outward through payments for machinery, services, licenses, and technology. At the same time, highly skilled Malaysians may leave for Singapore, Australia, Britain, or the United States, where salaries, research funding, and professional opportunities are stronger. This does not mean Malaysia has no talent. It means the domestic economy has not always created enough opportunities to retain and fully use that talent. And when productivity, wages, and innovation rise more slowly than expected, investors may become less enthusiastic about holding the country's assets over the long term. While Malaysia faced these structural challenges, Singapore followed a very different monetary strategy. Most central banks influence their economies mainly by changing interest rates. Singapore does something unusual. Since the early 1980s, the Monetary Authority of Singapore has placed the exchange rate at the center of monetary policy. It manages the Singapore dollar against a trade-weighted basket of currencies. Because Singapore imports so much of what it consumes, the exchange rate has a powerful effect on domestic prices. A stronger Singapore dollar can make imported food, fuel, and materials less expensive. This helps control inflation. Singapore does not simply fix its currency permanently at one level. The exchange rate moves within a managed policy band, but over long periods. The framework has often permitted gradual appreciation when economic conditions supported it. This means the widening gap was not caused only by the ringgit weakening. The Singapore dollar was also managed within a system designed to support price stability and confidence. Investors came to view Singapore as a predictable financial center. Strong institutions, consistent regulation, large financial markets, and confidence in government policy increased demand for Singapore dollar assets. This does not mean every Singapore policy was perfect, nor does it mean a stronger currency automatically makes every Singaporean wealthier. Singapore also faces high housing costs, high living expenses, inequality, and dependence on global trade. Its economic model placed a strong emphasis on stability, high-value activity, and protecting confidence in its currency. Malaysia's currency followed a more flexible path and was more exposed to changes in commodity prices, international capital flows, and global investor sentiment. Most dramatic early turning point came in 1997. Across Asia, currencies and financial markets came under enormous pressure. The crisis began in Thailand, but quickly spread through the region. Investors withdrew money. Companies carrying foreign currency debt faced disaster. Stock markets fell. Banks struggled. And currencies lost value. The ringgit was hit hard. This crisis was not created solely by Malaysian corruption or domestic politics. Thailand, Indonesia, South Korea, and other economies were also affected. Global capital moved rapidly, and financial weaknesses across the region were exposed. In September of 1998, Malaysia introduced capital controls and fixed the ringgit at 3 ringgit and 80 cents to 1 United States dollar. The decision remains controversial. Critics argued that capital controls damaged Malaysia's reputation. Supporters argued that they gave the country space to stabilize the economy without accepting all the conditions demanded elsewhere. Malaysia eventually recovered. And in 2005, the fixed exchange rate system ended. The ringgit returned to a managed floating system. But the Asian financial crisis changed how investors viewed regional currencies. It also revealed an important difference. When global conditions became dangerous, Malaysia's larger, commodity-linked, and capital flow-sensitive economy faced a different type of pressure from Singapore's highly managed financial system. The currencies were no longer traveling through the same economic world. During the following years, Malaysia continued growing. New factories opened. Exports expanded. Kuala Lumpur transformed. Electronics and electrical sector became internationally important. Malaysia became deeply integrated into global supply chains. This is why saying that the country experienced no progress would be inaccurate. The real problem was more subtle. Malaysia became successful enough to escape poverty, but struggled to move consistently into the highest value level of development. Economists sometimes call this the middle income challenge. Early growth can come from moving workers into factories, building infrastructure, and attracting foreign capital. Later growth is harder. It must come from productivity, innovation, management quality, advanced skills, competition, and the ability to create original products. Malaysia's productivity growth slowed. Skills mismatches persisted. Many university graduates entered jobs below their level of qualification. Smaller companies struggled to adopt advanced technology. Connections between universities and industry remained limited, and some highly productive firms did not expand enough to transform the broader economy. Government policy often attempted to solve these problems. There were national plans, innovation agencies, industrial strategies, technology corridors, tax incentives, and research programs. But announcing a program is not the same as implementing it effectively. When policies change repeatedly, when agencies overlap, when funding is spread across too many programs, or when political considerations influence economic decisions, resources can lose their impact. This is how policy failure contributes to currency weakness indirectly. Not because one bad program immediately changes the exchange rate, but because years of weak execution limit productivity and future earning potential. For decades, Malaysians discussed corruption, patronage, and political connections. But one scandal transformed those concerns into an international crisis. One Malaysia Development Berhad, better known as 1MDB, was created as a government investment fund. Its stated purpose was to support economic development, attract international investment, and improve the well-being of Malaysians. Instead, United States authorities alleged that more than 4.5 billion United States dollars were misappropriated from the fund between 2009 and 2015. Money moved through financial institutions around the world. Some of it was allegedly used for luxury properties, expensive artwork, a super yacht, business investments, and a Hollywood film company. The scale of the scandal damaged Malaysia's international reputation. It raised questions about oversight, government-linked companies, financial regulation, institutional independence, and whether powerful individuals could operate without sufficient accountability. The ringgit was already under pressure during the middle of the 2010s. Oil prices had fallen. The United States dollar was strengthening. Global investors were preparing for higher American interest rates. China's economy was slowing. All of these conditions mattered. It would be inaccurate to claim that 1MDB alone caused the ringgit's fall. But the scandal added a domestic crisis of confidence. At the same moment that global conditions were becoming more difficult, investors do not examine only economic growth. They also ask whether information can be trusted, whether contracts will be honored, whether institutions are independent, whether public debt is transparent, and whether rules may change unexpectedly when confidence weakens. Investors may reduce exposure to Malaysian shares, bonds, or projects. That lowers demand for ringgit. And when demand falls, the currency can weaken. Some viewers may ask, if corruption was so damaging, why did Malaysia continue growing? Because corruption does not always stop growth completely. A resource-rich, strategically located country can grow despite serious inefficiencies. Malaysia benefited from global trade, oil and gas, palm oil, electronics, foreign direct investment, a strong manufacturing base, and a hardworking population. The better question is not whether Malaysia grew, it is how much more Malaysia might have achieved with stronger institutions and more effective use of public resources. Could research spending have produced more commercial technology? Could universities have built stronger partnerships with industry? Could more Malaysian companies have become global brands? Could skilled workers have received better opportunities at home? Could infrastructure projects have cost less? Could public money have created more value? These questions cannot be answered with a precise exchange rate number. No economist can calculate exactly how many sen were lost because of one scandal, one contract, or one policy. But the direction of the effect is understandable. Corruption can distort investment, reduce competition, lower the quality of public services, discourage honest businesses, increase government costs, and weaken trust over decades. Those effects can reduce productivity and investor confidence. The result is not always a sudden crash. Sometimes, it is simply a country advancing more slowly than its neighbors. Governance is important, but the ringgit does not move only because of Malaysian politics. It trades in a global financial system dominated by the United States dollar. When American interest rates rise, international investors may move money into United States assets. When global investors become afraid, they often reduce exposure to emerging markets. When oil and commodity prices fall, Malaysia's export earnings and government revenue can come under pressure. When China slows, demand for regional exports may weaken. When wars, pandemics, or financial crises disrupt global trade, currencies can move quickly. The global financial crisis of 2008 affected investment and exports. The oil price collapse, beginning in 2014, placed pressure on commodity-producing economies. The pandemic disrupted trade, tourism, and production. Later, rapid increases in United States interest rates strengthened the dollar against many currencies, not only the ringgit. Bank Negara Malaysia describes the ringgit as market-determined. Its value reflects demand and supply, including trade, investment, interest rate differences, commodity prices, market sentiment, and domestic economic fundamentals. This means the ringgit can strengthen again. Its path is not permanently fixed downward, but over the long term, countries with stronger productivity, credible institutions, competitive companies, and consistent policies usually find it easier to maintain investor confidence. The exchange rate is important, but it is not a complete scorecard for national success. A stronger currency makes imports and overseas travel cheaper. It can help control inflation. It increases the international purchasing power of salaries and savings. But a currency that is too strong can also make exports more expensive. It can damage tourism or manufacturing competitiveness. A weaker currency can support exporters because goods become cheaper for foreign buyers. But it also raises the cost of imported food, machinery, medicine, technology, and education. The correct question is not, which country has the stronger currency? It is, what does each country produce? How productive are its workers? Are wages rising? Can businesses innovate? Is public money used effectively? Do institutions create trust? And are ordinary people receiving the benefits of growth? Singapore's exchange rate reflects its particular economic structure and policy framework. Malaysia's exchange rate reflects a different economy, with different resources, different risks, and different political history. Comparing the two currencies is useful, but treating the exchange rate as the only measure of success would be misleading. The ringgit did not fall from equality with the Singapore dollar because of one event. It was not caused by one prime minister, one political party, one scandal, or one economic crisis. The gap developed through accumulation. Malaysia and Singapore ended their currency link. They chose different monetary systems. Singapore built an exchange rate-centered policy designed for a small, import-dependent economy. Malaysia developed a larger economy exposed to commodities, manufacturing cycles, and international capital flows. The Asian financial crisis permanently changed the region. Global financial shocks repeatedly placed pressure on emerging market currencies. Malaysia industrialized. But its transition toward a fully innovation-driven economy was slower than many hoped. Research spending remained limited. Technology commercialization was inconsistent. Skilled workers left. Productivity growth slowed. Political dominance weakened some of the pressures for accountability and reform. Patronage and inefficient policies reduced the value created from public money. and major corruption scandals damage confidence. None of these factors alone explains the exchange rate. Together, they help explain why the two currencies moved so far apart. In 1967, the Malaysian dollar and Singapore dollar stood together, 1-to-1. Today, 1 Singapore dollar buys more than 3 Malaysian ringgit. But the real loss cannot be measured only through currency conversion. It can also be measured in opportunities. The research that was not commercialized, the businesses that never grew, the skilled workers who left, the public money that produced less than it should have, and the reforms delayed until another crisis made them unavoidable. Malaysia is not a failed economy. It remains an important manufacturing nation, a major trading economy, and a country with enormous human and natural advantages. Its future is not decided by its past. The ringgit can strengthen, productivity can improve, institutions can be rebuilt, research can become industry, and public money can create greater public value. But that requires more than defending the currency when it falls. It requires understanding why confidence was weakened, why productivity slowed, and why neighboring economies sometimes move faster. The story of the ringgit and Singapore dollar is not simply the story of one currency rising and another currency falling. It is the story of two countries that began with the same monetary roots, then made different choices, built different institutions, and paid different prices for them. The exchange rate is only the final number. Behind it is more than half a century of history. This is History After Dark. Real events, difficult questions, and the stories hidden behind the numbers.